I am really excited about this episode because we are talking about turning your side hustle hobby of a business into a full-time success. And full-time success as an entrepreneur can still mean it's a part-time job where you're not like doing all of the things. And I am so excited to have our guest, Hailey Rowe, who is a marketing and sales coach and strategist for health coaches. So I had someone reach out to me in my DMs and like, Nikita, why are you having all these health coaches on your show? And I was like, I guess I should tell you guys how I come in contact with some of these amazing ladies. So because of the podcast and because of so many different places that I find myself in my entrepreneur journey, I find myself meeting these women at different networking events, virtual summits where I'm speaking, and all of that jazz. And so we connect, and I make it a point to really connect with my guest that I'm sharing the stage with. I make it a point to connect as much as possible for any like in-person or online events. And I definitely recommend that you do the same because it's really a great way to grow your network and your support system. And if you know anything about me, I'm one of those people that loves to give and be of service and to then leverage that service in a way that feels in alignment where I do serve and then we serve each other. It's like this beautiful circle of serving one another. So Hailey is one of those amazing women that I met during one of my speaking gigs. So this is kind of like low-key a strategy, y'all. Like if you're trying to figure out how to get on other platforms and to be seen and heard, it's to make sure you're connecting with people when you're in different locations or doing different things in your business. Really connect with those other people. I don't believe in the competition kind of thought process. Whether you are a coach or whether you are a photographer, or there are always going to be more of the same. But the difference is our stories are all very unique and we can all benefit from those lived experiences, whether or not you choose to work with me or with any of the other amazing women on the show. So just want to put that out there. And of course, I love working with women on the show who I feel like there's some alignment there. There's some understanding of the importance of mindset and sustainability in your business. And this is exactly why I'm having Hailey on the show. So a little bit about Hailey. She has helped business owners and coaches get more consistent with how they show up and grow and have impact in their business. She shares her fast framework marketing and business tips in her Health Coach Nation podcast, which you can also check out the show notes for when she had me on her show, and in the Health Coach Nation Facebook group. So you can find all of that information from Hailey in the show notes. And in this episode, you will be able to surpass mental obstacles for lasting business expansion, craft compelling propositions to grab and attract your client's interest, and maintain determination and steadiness for potent and effective marketing efforts, and leverage relationship-based, as you all know I love, marketing during whatever economic season we're in, and so much more. So be sure to stay tuned. Welcome to She's Crafted to Thrive, a globally ranked podcast for women living with chronic illness and creatives in business. I'm your host, Nikita Williams, chronic illness warrior and photographer turned digital marketer turned award-winning coach. I love helping chronic illness warriors and creatives to live with their chronic illness and creativity as their superpower in life and business. On the show, you will hear the very stories that helped our guests, my clients, and myself to define our dream way of making money with proven strategies and marketing and mindset, all to grow a business that thrives without sacrificing our health. So stay tuned because you'll find the inspiration and tools and the resources you need to craft a life and business that thrives. All right. I'm so excited to have Hailey on the show. We have been having lots of conversations lately, so I can't wait for you to get to know her. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I am a marketing and sales coach, and I work primarily with wellness-based business owners and coaches and life coaches, people in the personal development space. And I love it. I'm from Chicago. I used to live in LA when I worked in the business development and marketing startup world. And that was really fun. But eventually, the company that I worked for ended up letting everybody go because they had a bunch of delays and all
Mm.
these challenges. And so that was around 2017. I'd been in the coaching world since 2010 with my certs and stuff, but I was one of those coaches who was like, I'm not ready. I'm just going to do it on the
Mm.
side. And that whole transition where I got let go was kind of my sign to be like, all right, you know what? It's time to pursue it. So I did. And that was in 2017 and have been doing it ever since.
So very cool. Yeah, there are a lot of coaches that I meet that feel that way. Like, yeah, I've been doing this for a little bit, kind of on the side and the hush hush. And then something happens in their life and they're like, I should just embrace this. So super cool. Your niche is so specific to marketing, specifically with businesses. And one of the things we were talking about off the show was like, here we are, what is it? Almost August. It's basically August of 2022. And there's a lot of change that's happening in the market for those of us who are coaches, those of us who are, creatives offering service-based services. What are you seeing that many people need to start to look at maybe differently when it comes to their marketing right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what's happening right now is the expectations are different than they used to be. So, in other words, I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Ramos's Dream $100 million offers book,
Mm-hmm.
but he talks about how your offer these days has to be really tight and really strong. And I completely agree with that. And he uses this formula of like, dream outcome you're providing, and then limit as much pain, sacrifice, inconvenience, and uncertainty among your audience as you can with your offer.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm seeing right now in the market is like, that is essential. Because if your offer is just a package of sessions or just a XYZ course where you're not leading with the benefits, you're not talking about any friction removers that makes people feel like, okay, wow, this thing I'm doing I really trust that it's going to get me to the end goal, then you're going to feel like you are a commodity. You're going to have a lot of people kind of just putting it off. And It's used to be that you could kind of do that. And, they're just, maybe you were the only well-known person in your market or locally or whatever. And now I feel like it is becoming more saturated. So your niche standing out and your offer standing out, and the benefits you provide in leading with those is really going to be key. And also the last thing I'd say is anytime the economy is changing or things like that, you always want to not structure yourself as a nice to have, but more of like a painkiller. So something that's more, this is going to solve something very, very important to me right now, that compared to, it would be nice to insert, XYZ. It would be nice to eat healthier, but it's not like that's not solving pain killers for people.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think sometimes we can get comfortable in the way we have been offering and offers. I know that's something that I constantly am working on for myself personally as a coach, is like really being in tune with my audience. And to me, that kind of started with my own journey of myself. So let's talk a little bit about how you have, as Hailey, come to have a successful business. What have been some of the wins and challenges along the way?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when I got a bunch of different coaching certifications, the first challenge was me just thinking I needed more of those to be successful and not realizing that's just the first baby step. And then you're like, okay, now I have to run a business. Right. So I got those certifications. And thankfully for me, I got my bachelor's in entrepreneurship and worked in business development and marketing for some companies because I knew I wanted to get that experience. But I didn't apply it per se to my own business for quite a while. And I wish I would have started that sooner. So one of my regrets was thinking, oh, it's safer to just do it for this company. And, that's just the safer route. And I was definitely wrong about that. And so that's why I'm very passionate about, like, you can have amazing skills, whatever your hobbies are, whatever your coaching skills are. But if you don't have the marketing and sales plan and, some consistency with that, it's going to remain a side project or a hobby or a charity, and you're going to be afraid to charge. And like, you got to have that stuff. So I'd say that's one of the biggest ones. And then the other thing that has been a struggle along the way is just, I think I see, well, for people I talk with, I see a lot of out of orderness. And yes, entrepreneurship is not a direct path. And there's not like, okay, step one, do this, because everybody's path is different. But there are some things that you don't need to do in the beginning of your business that I see people doing and spending time, allocating their precious time, which is one of the best and most important resources we have as entrepreneurs,
yes,
on things that don't matter that much. So like obsessing over your logo, obsessing over your social media graphic, rather than, building relationships, taking discovery calls, offering something, whether it's signing up for your email, free class, or whatever it is. So I think, and then spending a ton of money on a website before you're clear on your proof of concept and what your audience needs and wants. That's another big thing I see. Or people thinking, well, the first step is ads. And they don't have, again, they don't have any proof of concept. They don't know what people respond well to. So it's a very expensive ads test, which, don't get me wrong, anytime you're going to do marketing, it will require a little bit of testing. But you want to go in with at least a more educated guess about what has worked organically first before doing something like ads. So me personally, of course, I did some things out of order, but mostly I see a lot of my clients as well coming to me saying, oh, I did this. And, now I'm like, whoops, little detour that I mean to take.
Yeah. What were some, I think it's so interesting because you mentioned like you've done some of those things. And I think it's really important to kind of normalize that this is I have clients who have masters in marketing and the things that I'm like, but that you didn't need to do that, right? Like, that. So I think it's just really nice to kind of normalize that we all make these like really, when we look back and we're like, yeah, that probably was not the smartest thing to do. What was one of those experiences for you, Hailey?
Yeah. So one of mine was I had this random vision one day that I should write this really in-depth ebook about how to have healthy skin, how I overcame my own acne. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a must-have. This is so important.
Okay.
And I don't know why I did this, but I did no market research, meaning I did not see if people actually cared about this and, what they would want to see. I just wrote it for myself. And then I put it out there and it was like this really long, lengthy ebook that nobody wanted. And I was like, okay, that was definitely one of my mistakes where now I actually more create with what my audience wants and hear what they actually want and need and problems they would pay to solve compared to just being like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to just try that. The other thing though, I think I used to be afraid of failing. So I didn't try. It was almost the opposite where, I think you need to have a balance of you're willing to try things, but you're also not just like sporadically trying things. So in other words, I've become so much more okay with rejection, with failing, with the embarrassment of that, with messing up in my videos, with a typo or two every once in a while. And I used to think, that would be the detriment to my career. And so I wouldn't even try these things. I'd just reject myself up front. I wouldn't make the ask. I wouldn't take the shot. I wouldn't reach out to the podcast host or whatever. And that set me back by far the most. It's kind of like the cost of inaction was a huge thing I did wrong in the beginning because I was so afraid of failure versus now I'm like, if I'm not failing, I'm not doing anything. Like something's going wrong because they go together. The more I've grown, the more also the fails have grown in direct proportion to that,
Yeah, I love that you shared that, Hailey, because I definitely think there is this, what I call the reels of entrepreneurship on social media. We see everyone else's wins and, no one really talks about the stuff that did not go right, that you tried and you threw up against the wall and you're like, oh, no, that's not nope, shouldn't have done that. But I did learn something. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Along the journey of this entrepreneur road and as a coach, have you had any challenges like overcoming personal things like health wise or supporting people in this journey of growing a business?
I would say, as far as health challenges, I had that, I think, I had that initially, which is why I was passionate about wellness and wellness business owners and that kind of thing. But I kind of worked through those things, thankfully. But of course, the occasional, challenge with your health, but like nothing too crazy. But what I have experienced is when you're in that stage where, like, I have experienced burnout, I would say, because there was a time where I was doing multiple side jobs and the switching cost of being like, okay, I got to go teach a class and then I got to go be an online entrepreneur and then I got to go like work on blah, blah, blah. And it was just kind of a time where I felt like I was sporadic in all different directions and not getting very far. And so it felt a little bit like, oh man, am I doing it wrong? And all that negative self-talk that comes with starting a business and having the struggles in the middle where you're not at that beautiful, consistency yet. So I think that was a big one for me. And I had to take a bit of a pause and have a reevaluation of like, what's the risks? I mean, is it really as risky as I think to let go of some of these other jobs or opportunities, like these side hustles while I'm growing my business? And I kind of had to be like, there's so much power in constraint and focus. And I think I'm going to trust myself to do that. And it took a lot of time to build that trust. And thankfully it worked out, but it definitely was scary. And it definitely felt like a little bit of burnout.
Yeah, that's real. Like I know for me personally, I've experienced like opportunities are wonderful, but it's not every opportunity is a yes for you, like not all of the time. And how have you decided on what are your yeses and what are your nos, like when it comes to where you're headed in your business?
That's such a good question. I think the first thing is to ask yourself, what are your reasons for doing X, Y, and Z? What are your reasons for not doing it? And then look at the reasons and see which one is more aligned with who I want to be in the future. Which one would my future self be like, I'm proud of you for making this choice? And which one, maybe don't make a judgment based on what's scarier or what would I like more, but more like, what's going to cause me to grow more? I'm going to look back and be like, I'm really glad I did that. You know what I mean? Even in the moment where right now I might not want to make that choice. Later, I'll look back and be like, thank you for doing that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of how I make decisions.
I love that you shared that because I think there's a lot of advice out there that says like, if it doesn't scare you like 100%, then it's not worthy. Like it's not worthy of you going in that direction. And I think there is a definite fine line balance in what that looks like for each person. And how has that served you in growing your business till today?
Yeah. Well, it definitely has helped me again with that focus piece, like being okay with limiting my niche a little bit more, which really ends up actually expanded me more because people outside of my niche still came to me more than when I didn't have a niche at all. Yeah. So having that courage to make a decision and line up with it and just be like, this is what I'm doing. And then your brain's like, oh, okay, now we have like a path and now we can actually pay attention and like get moving towards this thing. And you can always change your mind later if you want, but at least giving yourself that opportunity to be like, this is what we're doing, everybody in my body, brain, let's line up with it. Let's go. And you can reevaluate later if you want.
Oh, so good. So many good things in there. So it's like, once you make that decision, it feels like things become easier. When you're like, okay, this is the path. It's a little bit different because I know the circumstance, but I'm curious to know, like when someone's like, I want to try something new. I want to see if this works, especially in my marketing and my sales. How long should someone give, this new path that they're trying to see? Is this a good fit? Is this something I should be doing? Should I tweak it? Yeah. What's a good time gauge for that?
So I have two answers for it. One is like the conventional marketing answer, and one is my answer personally. So the conventional marketing answer would be like 3 to 6 months. You should give something a fair shot and then reevaluate at the end of 90 days or more. Now, if it's something, my answer is pick a goal. So for example, let's say you have a webinar and you want to get 7 clients from that webinar. So you say, I'm going to get 7 clients from this webinar, and you continue to refine, redo, put out, promote, talk about the replay of the webinar, et cetera, until you hit the goal. That's my answer, is like pick a goal and take action until you get there and just keep refining it until it works. Compared to saying, I'm going to do this webinar, I'm going to test it out. Oh, nobody signed up. So I'm going to jump now to a whole different marketing strategy and just ditch the webinar completely. Because I think that a lot of times people do that and then they're left with no traction when they could have ended up with traction by actually being like, hey, let's look at the data of that. What was the show up rate? Did people really hate it? Or were there some people who did watch it the whole time? Like, what could you do to get more seats registered the next time? Like, I would just say it's much better to pick a goal and just say, I'm going to work towards it until I do, no matter the timeline, and then figure it out. And then once you have it, it's working and you could keep repeating it, compared to jumping around to different things.
Oh, that's so good. That's such good advice. Because I think we do hear a lot of opposite advice than that. It's like, oh, it didn't work. Go to the next thing. Like, try something else. And I definitely think it's kind of like, I bake. I don't know. Do you bake? Are you like a baker person?
I like eating the baked goods.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like baking. It's like you might try a recipe a certain way and it might go fine. Like it might produce, but maybe you didn't like it so much and you want to start trying something different with it. And if it doesn't go right the second time, you're not just going to give up. You know, it makes a cake. Know it makes a cake. So it's kind of like with what you were saying with the webinar, like, you know that this works for people. Webinars have been proven just in general to work to help people's business to grow. Maybe you just haven't landed on the specific way of doing it or teaching it or attracting people to it. So it's such a good point.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are some things that someone can do in order to grow their business, especially when we're seeing this recession? We're seeing lots of words about recession right now. So what can one do to start recession proofing, if you will, their business?
So the first thing is I would suggest you don't just make assumptions based on what people are telling you. So in other words, if you're seeing all this hype and all this fear, there might be some truth to it, but at the same time, there's just as many people who still want to buy your program. And I think what causes people to slow down during a recession sometimes when it comes to being a business owner is they stop selling as much because they feel either like they feel bad or they feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or people don't need me right now. And so then their actions change. So then, of course, they're surefire gonna have a recession in their business because they're just like changing their actions, But the truth is you have to show up to work every day, even during a recession. And so my suggestion would be still sell, still market, still be yourself, still help people. You might have to look for new ways to help people. In other words, you might hear that the messaging is changing among your niche, or like they're having different concerns you might have to speak to and different objections you might have to talk about in your content, which is fine. But you can still have the same overall, promise or goal you help them with. You just might have to tweak a little bit the messaging or how you're delivering it, things like that. So that's the first thing. And I think the other thing is just know, like, no matter what, every day, even like, I think those times where maybe you feel like people aren't buying as much, it's still an opportunity time to either be growing your email list and nurturing the heck out of people so that when times do go back to being good, you're like, oh my gosh, I have a whole crew of people who just like love my stuff. And we've been connecting, we've been building community, and I've been creating a movement. So do like still look for those opportunities of, can I be growing my list right now? Can I be doing a ton of podcasts? Like, I know for me personally, June was an amazing month, like great month. July was a little bit slow because people either were on vacation or like whatever. And so I've been using this opportunity to be on like tons of podcasts, tons of collaborations with people. And I've still been selling and, getting clients, but it's just not been at the rate quote unquote used to. So I've been like, all right, well, I'm just going to use this time to batch a bunch of podcast interviews or something. And it's been great. So I'd say that's another tip, is just look for the opportunities.
Yeah, there's so much in that. The first part about like, don't buy into all the hype. Like, I was reading something recently, and we think about the recessions that have happened over the years. So many of the companies that we love and are in love with now actually came about because of a recession.
Yeah.
And also people are still buying. They may take a longer time to make the decisions to buy, but they do eventually make them. And I think it's really important, like you said, that point of like, if you're thinking that no one is buying, then likely your actions are like, well, I'm just not going to say that I have something to offer anymore. I'm not going to do the thing that I used to do more consistently. And that can become the result that you will see. You know, so many people, I talk about this, and I know you talk about this, is like our thoughts create our results so much. And, you know, our thoughts get all up in the noise that's not actually true. And we start changing our actions. And I think it's so important. I feel the same way during this time of really just leaning more into relationships, because relationships, honestly, I believe are the thing that helps your business to grow. How can someone use relationships or like start tapping into growing their business as like using relationship marketing as a tool in their business right now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things. I had a podcast interview or a podcast episode on the Health Coach Nation podcast called 15 Ways to Get Clients Without Social Media. And it was kind of about in your community, what can you do to build relationships and stuff like that. And I would say, so a couple things. Number one, you want to ask yourself, where do my people hang out and how can I be bringing value to them in some way, shape, or form, or before you bring them value, you have to take an interest in them. So in other words, let's say, your people are in this local networking group that you're going to attend, and you go to the networking group and you first just have to take an inventory, like who's in this group? What do they want? How can I help them should be the first question you ask, rather than how can they help me? Yeah. And then once you know that, then you could be like, oh, so-and-so, I actually, do think I can help with that. I have a free blah, blah, blah. And I always say the pre-offer has to come first. So we call that, it's something free of value that gives an upfront small win or result ahead of time that somebody will do and then have more know, like, and trust factor with you. So your steps would be, first, you have to connect. Second, you have to take an interest in them. Third, you have to see if there's something of value you can even offer them based on what you know about them, and make the ask and make it permission-based. And then fourth is, after they've done that or experienced the free thing, then you can be like, do you want to go deeper on that? And that would be like your whole sales process. So I would say you can do that model in any format. You can do it in local networking groups. You could go speak places. You could be on podcasts, and for the audience listening, offer a freebie. You can do Instagram live collaborations with people who will get you in front of your ideal client audience. So there's a lot of different ways, but I think the key for you, if you're a listener, is just to pick 1 to 2 to start with and really nail down and make some offers to be a part or add value to whatever it is you're looking into, and start there.
Yeah, I think it's like, don't go crazy and do all of the things and be all over the place. I definitely think honing your skill in 1 or 2 of those areas really helps you to grow a lot easier, and also to see what is and is not working, right? Like when you can identify what's working, what's not working. So what are some fun things that you enjoy in your business? Like, what are some things that you're like, it just brings you joy?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I think it all comes down to my clients. And I was just editing a video that we're going to use. And it's like a little bit of a reel of like different clients saying their wins and different client results. And I was watching that. It brought me back to like, why all of this is exactly what I meant to be doing, why I love it. Like, so that just brings me joy, is seeing clients' transformation and seeing them walk out of the program different than they were when they started, with more skills, with more confidence, with more, business savviness and crushing it. So that's the key. And then I also really I have 2 weekly small group coaching calls a week. And those are fun because it is important to have like a routine, and have like, especially if you're an entrepreneur, everything in your business can feel like, ooh, it's sometimes like this and it's sometimes like this. And so finding for me, it's like those 2 calls. I know those are my peeps. I know we're going to work. I know we're going to like have a good session. And so I think for people listening, it's like, find out what are your routine things in your business that are going to give you a sense of like stability or like excitement, where it's not, you feel like something is stable and solid and grounds you. And that would be a suggestion I'd have for sure.
Oh, I love that suggestion. I don't think I've ever thought about it in that context before. Like, I definitely have those routines myself. Like, there's people like during the week, like every month I have a group too. And it's like definitely something I enjoy. And you're right, especially no matter what's going on in your business, you feel more connected and it's also exciting. And you're around other people who are experiencing probably similar challenges, wins as you are. And it helps you kind of just stay focused, like, okay, we're all in this, we're still going. This is so important. That can become the thing that keeps you going in this entrepreneur journey. So cool.
Yeah. And one other thing I'd add to that is there's a book called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And I would say one thing that makes me excited in my business that I have to pay attention to, like I have to consciously pay attention to this, is the gains and not just the gaps. So a lot of times our human brain is wired to be like, why can't I figure out this XYZ technology? What's wrong with me? Why, like whatever, right? And we make things mean things about us when it's really just data in our business. And so for me, I really love focusing on what are my wins? Look at how far you've come, and you're usually comparing yourself to like a future version of yourself that doesn't exist yet, that you're like, oh my gosh, if I'm not there, I can't be happy here. And I think the key is to be like, no, where I am right now is actually living some people's dreams. And yes, I have high expectations, and yes, I want to grow even more, but just acknowledging those gains and getting your brain focused on that compared to just asking questions that lead you down a road of self-deprecation.
Yeah, this is something, Hailey, that I preach about with my clients. This is something I'm like, a coach that I follow, her name is DL Sharon, and something that she talks about is something I talk about, is like making these wins and these strides that you've gone to a part of your strategy, like make it a part of the celebration of where you are right now, because without these we call them small, but they're actually really big because it took us so many steps to get to that win. It's such an important piece that we kind of were like, once we reach it, we kind of fly over and we're next to the next problem. Or like you said, we're looking at the things that didn't go right. And we're kind of having all these very like negative thoughts. And then we're going all in these places that we don't need to go because they don't serve us in the way we need to grow. So I love that you shared that, because it's so true. The gaps, we need to know what the gaps are. But we also definitely need to celebrate and like be proud of where we've gotten to this point, because we didn't quit. We're still here, still going.
Right. Absolutely.
Super cool. So if there was one mindset shift that you think that you've had to cultivate over this, you've been doing this a long time, what has been that one mindset shift that you've had to continually grow and adjust in order to continue to grow in your business that you've also seen help your clients?
Yeah. Whew. Okay. So I'd say there's 2 things. One, just understanding and deciding to believe that it's all working and you're working it, and you don't need to see the results quite yet, because the seeds that you're planting do pay off. I can't tell you how many times I've either been on a podcast, talked to somebody 2 years ago, somebody said, not right now, and then later they end up becoming a client, or they share a big opportunity with me or whatever. And so I think sometimes people are very instant gratification oriented when they start a business, and they're like, I just want to like be on the beach and have passive income, AKA like on their day 4 of starting their business. And I'm like, you got to plant the seeds for the harvest, and you got to understand that the seeds are growing underground, whether you see it or not. And you just have to have a fierce trust that it's all coming together. And it does when you believe that. if you're believing, oh, I did all these things and nothing's working, you're probably going to miss the opportunities for things to be working, I think,
So true.
as you close yourself off. So I think that's a big one. And then the other one, I'm going to go back to this thing about failure. There's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but it was like, if I fail more than you, I win. Because the person who is unafraid to feel uncomfortable emotions along the way in the journey and is not afraid of failing also opens themselves up to bigger wins, bigger asks, bigger playing, bigger opportunities, bigger prices, bigger, like everything else is bigger. So I think you got to have those, understanding that the contrast and the fails go very nicely with the big wins. So embracing the whole circle of it.
Yeah. So good. I love that. Just like, all of that. It's like, it's a harvest. It takes time. Stacey Bowman, I'm sure you're familiar with her. One of the things she talks about is the value bank. And I love that concept because it's very much what we all have to think about. It's like when we're doing a podcast episode right now, it's just me and Hailey just chatting right now. And then it's going to go to our audiences and maybe 2 or 3 years from now, or maybe even 2 months from now. We don't know. The point is to add to your value bank, and it will grow. It will grow. You will see the results. And along the way, those not so great things that you wish didn't happen are the things that help you grow. And so I love that kind of full circle. Look at the whole journey as a way to get you to where you want to go. So thank you so much, Hailey.
And one quick thing about that too is the value. Like, I think letting go of the attachment that if I do XYZ, it needs to come back to me directly from XYZ.
Right.
Compared to thinking that all the value you're putting out there, it does accumulate and it does indirectly link to each other. Yeah. And so it will come back to you, but it might not be the way you thought. In other words, you might do this podcast interview and it might lead to another cool thing that we didn't even know when we thought, oh, it was just going to lead to blank. So it just don't expect it to be a tit for tat thing. Yeah, expect it to be a big picture thing. The more value you put out, the more value you get back.
Yeah, so 100%. I'm going to actually link Stacey's episode to that because that's what she talks about so much about that. It's such we have that mindset, like, I'm going to do this, so it needs to come from this. I can't tell you how many times I have done something and I'm like, how did you find me? And they're like, and I'm like, whoa, I would never have guessed that, and so it's fun. I feel like that's the exciting part of giving, right? When you give and then when it does come back around, you're like, oh, that is so cool. So how can our audience connect with you and, be in your world?
Yeah. Well, I have a podcast called Health Coach Nation, and it's for health, life, and mindset coaches who want to grow their business. So there's a lot of marketing tips on there, sales tips, time management, things like that. And I also have a community called Health Coach Nation. So it's on Facebook. It's facebook.com/groups/Health Coach Nation. I'm at HaileyRowe.com. If you want to connect on Instagram and you like this episode, let me know. I have a free overwhelm masterclass I can send you. And it's all about how to ditch the overwhelm, how to get focused on your right next steps. And it's a little cheat sheet to help you through that. So I think I don't remember what link I gave you, but hopefully in the show notes, we'll have something of free value.
We will definitely have all of that in the show notes. I definitely will take a look at it. I don't see it. I'll let you know. But yes, I am so thankful you hopped on. And also be sure to pay attention to the show notes because we'll link back to when Hailey and I had a conversation as well. And so you can get to hear both of us again.
Yeah, you were awesome. Loved it.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening, and I hope this conversation inspired you. Be sure to visit the website at craftedtothrive.com to check out the show notes and grab all the goodies that I or the guests mentioned in the show. Join us for our next one. In the meantime, remember you are crafted to thrive.